My name is Gina Marie Granado, and I'm living with keratoconus. This is a look through my eyes.
Gina has been living with keratoconus for most of her life. Although it is a part of her reality, it does not define her, and she's determined to achieve her educational goals.
Well, I'm currently enrolled in the MPhil PhD program at the Institute of International Relations, and I am studying the Caribbean reparations movement and its implications for mixed-race persons like myself, a proud Douglas. Doing any kind of postgraduate work entails lots of reading. I mean, they don't say you're reading for a degree for joke. It's really you're reading for a degree. So when I come from work after reading all day as a researcher, I read all night as a student. And it also calls for a lot of self-discipline, commitment. You know, you have to put your mind to it because at the end of the day, I mean, you know, no one is going to be on your back to get it done. It's really up to you to do PhD work. Coping with, you know, the demands of a degree and being a working student is not always easy. But I think if you have a lot of structure and you're very self-disciplined and organized, it is very possible to do both successfully and easily. But I could quite say that with my eye condition, this has slowed me down tremendously, and I've had to even take a semester off at one point to get treatment. So I'm not running the Olympic sprint race, as they would proverbially say. I'm more of a long-distance runner. Having support is a very important part of living with keratoconus, so any eye condition, I suppose. And yes, I do have a support system, which entails, you know, my friends and family. They are there for moral support to always encourage me along the way, to make sure that I am on track with my own goals, and also to offer any assistance when it's time to go for my treatment and, you know, see my doctors and so forth. On those days, I need their support even more to keep me mentally focused. You know, I don't really feel like, you know, I should describe what has been an important part of my growth and development as a person as a disadvantage or a setback per se. You know, I tend to think that sometimes, you know, we think so much about the negative and we don't really focus on the positive. And, you know, keratoconus has really taught me a lot about myself. So I wouldn't say I'm at a disadvantage, but rather I live with challenges which I'm overcoming daily. I'm not an Alicia Keys, just learning to play. So, but this brings a lot of joy to me because this is one of the things I discovered when I started having keratoconus, that, you know, music is a form of therapy.
There is no data on the number of cases of keratoconus here in Trinidad and Tobago. However, there are a number of factors that you should look out for in order to determine whether you are at risk of developing this degenerative eye condition.
The commonest association between keratoconus, which is an abnormality of the cornea, the very front surface of the eye, the commonest association is allergic eye disease and asthma, sinusitis, conditions that are associated with itchy eyes and excessive eye rubbing. Most people who develop keratoconus present signs, not always detected, but they develop signs in their teens, some in their early teens. And we've had several kids at the age of 10 whom we've treated for keratoconus. And what happens is that the cornea, which is the clear part of the eye at the very front. So if you look into someone's eyes, you see the colored part of the eye, you are actually looking through the cornea, which is transparent. Very much like if you're looking at the face of the clock through the glass. It has a regular curvature. It is virtually spherical, particularly in the central 1/3 of the cornea, which overlies the pupil and therefore is your line of sight. In keratoconus, the cornea becomes more steeply curved, tending towards being conical, like the base of an ice cream cone, if you like. And we do see very severe cases that are almost like the tip of an ice cream cone. With the increase in steepening or bulging of the cornea, the tissue is being stretched and it's becoming thinner. And it can progress to the point where the inner lining breaks and the cornea becomes acutely swollen, vision drops. The patient or an observer will see that the center of the eye looks white. The patient is sensitive to the glare, and it then, when it resolves, it leaves a scar, and contact lenses may be required. Hereditary factors in keratoconus probably account for about 10%, but these are very few. The vast majority is related to allergic eye disease. Prevention of keratoconus is a difficult proposition. What we can do is prevent the worsening or progression of the condition by early detection and appropriate treatment. The progression relates to one either natural tendency to progression, or it is aggravated by habitual eye rubbing associated with itching of the eyes. So that the way to treat with it is the use of appropriate eye medication to prevent itchy eyes. Unfortunately, if keratoconus gets to the point where it causes severe thinning and scarring of the cornea, there is no reversal.
From a very young age, I wore glasses. My standard 5 teacher would have told my parents, I was squinting to see on the board. And I got glasses naturally and wore them and was quite comfortable with them, actually. It was in my late teens that I had astigmatism, and it started to get worse over time to the point where glasses wasn't working for me anymore. So I went to my optician, and he started looking at the eye, and he said, I think you have keratoconus. It was the first time I've ever heard the word keratoconus, to be frank. And I was like, what? And then he said, there's no cure. So I was like, oh my God, what? No cure? So I started doing research, and that was when I found out about age 21. It so happened that I wore these tiny contact lens in my eye called RGPs, which is what usually is given to keratoconus patients like myself. And these lenses are really good for our eyes because they help you to get the best vision given your eyesight. And, they also help to restrict as I was saying, that protrusion that happens. It helps to stabilize that condition. I think it only happened in my early 30s that I realized that my lens kept changing every year because my eye shape kept changing and changing. In 2019, on Holy Thursday, I woke up like a normal day and realized something was different. I looked around my room and I couldn't see. And it was a very alarming experience. I looked into the mirror and then realized that part of my eye had actually shed. So I had this white substance under my eye. And I started to panic, of course, naturally. You wake up and then you're wondering, well, what's going on? Remember, it's Holy Thursday, so the next day is Good Friday. So my mom was like, okay, let's go see a doctor immediately. And that is when they told me, your cornea ruptured in my left eye. And I was really traumatized. I didn't know what was taking place. I spent almost close to a year with that eye, with an opaque kind of covering towards the front of the eye. I had no vision in the left eye at all. I was in a stage called a corneal hydrops. And it was really something that I wish no one would have to experience if they have this condition. When I first experienced the corneal hydrops, it became clear that I am beginning to show signs of significant loss of vision, and that this could entail the possibility of not leading a normal life like others in terms of what I can and cannot do I started to do a lot of research naturally because the question was, what can I do now? You know, what are my options for treatment? Where can I turn to? And there's not really a whole bunch of information locally on this particular disease. And I started digging on the internet and came across other persons with the disease and even put up my story on Facebook, and other people reached out and told me, well, you know, have you heard about the Caribbean Eye Institute? That, you know, there are doctors there who know about this disease. And that is where I ended up coming to terms with keratoconus and what it means for your lifestyle and living with this particular disease is a very difficult challenge because it's unpredictable where things can go. And because options for treatment are limited here locally, and because in general a whole set of science is not yet revealing how best to treat with keratoconus. I mean, this is a new area of study for plenty scientists. They're now finding new ways to treat it with, you know, specially designed lens using 3D technology, etc. It could be scary, but I would say that with God and good support and with the advice of doctors, you can definitely look at how to plan your life around keratoconus, or rather how to not make keratoconus the only thing that defines you.
From a young age, Gina has always worn glasses, but she never would have thought it would be her reality.
Dear Gina, you can do anything you put your mind to. You will do great things. You have so much to offer, and the sky is the limit. Love, Gina.
If given the opportunity, there may be things we would like to tell our younger selves, and even though life does not work like that, we can take those lessons and adapt them to our future or help others to avoid our mistakes.
I think anybody who's going to their ophthalmologist or their eye surgeon, that they get from them, you know, what are the risk factors that I have that may lead to poor eye health? And that is a discussion that everybody should be having with their doctors, not just in eye disease, but everything as well. So if you have got more than 3 to 5 risk factors, you need to be seeing that eye doctor regularly, like every couple of months. 1 or 2 risk factors, maybe yearly visits. Okay, so it depends. I would say that family history is one of the strongest risk factors out there. So we know that most diseases are genetically linked, so their root cause are genetic, and so it only makes sense that you should know everything that's going on within your families. So if your mom has glaucoma and your dad has diabetes, you know, these are 2 things that you need to be looking out for. When it comes to eye care, we have a family of professionals. So we have the opticians, the optometrists, and the ophthalmologists. And I think, you know, there's nothing that beats a thorough eye exam, looking at both front and back of the eyes, ancillary testing like visual field testing. This is all, in the last couple of years, have helped us identify eye diseases and identify eye diseases early on. So really good, careful eye exams are definitely part and parcel of what we would promote, safety first, and then also early referral onto the ophthalmologist. This is really important because we can't see the patients early enough when they have a problem, because prevention is really key in eye disease.
Once you are faced with a disease which can potentially cause you significant loss of vision, you need to ask yourself, okay, how am I going to lead a normal life? One of the first questions that will come to you is, can I work with a condition like this? Would I be able to perform driving, for example, or some of my hobbies, like, you know, would I be able to lead a normal life? This is where, you know, the advice of doctors come in. I am not a doctor, but I would tell you very frankly that there is a wealth of resources and everyone's condition is different. For me, I've begun putting financial things in place to allow me treatment options and also the possibility of whether I lose, you know, significant reduction in my vision, what that would look like for me in the future. I also have to think about speeding up my PhD work now so that, you know, I could kind of get things out of the way that require heavy use of my eyes. Keratoconus is a disease that science is showing that, there's a possibility of some genetic links being, handed down through your parentage, your lineage. I do believe that there are things that you can do to prevent your eyesight from reaching to a stage of, or having a serious condition like keratoconus. One of them is rubbing your eyes. And a lot of people don't realize this, but when you have sinuses or allergies, for example, there's a tendency to really rub your eyes. You wake up the first thing in the morning, you rub your eyes. You could actually rub yourself into blindness, meaning that by rubbing your cornea so hard, you are actually reducing that cornea over time. So this is, and things that are related to your eyes, they're irreversible in the sense that if you lose vision, it's not like they could, replace your eye. So, people don't do this, and I see people putting their hands in their eyes. And when I was a child, I rubbed my eyes a lot. So I wouldn't doubt if that would have factored into my condition being even more severe than it really is. The sad reality with keratoconus is that you will not improve by itself. The damage is done. But you can seek treatment options that could manage your situation or help you to get better vision given your current situation. So I would encourage people to get advice from a doctor, from ophthalmologist, not your optician alone, right? Your optician will probably tell you, okay, they may be able to spot that you have keratoconus, but you should be referred to an ophthalmologist as soon as you know that you have that disease. And I would say that was one of the things I learned the hard way, because I was treated with contact lens over a period of time, but I never really got the opinion or the advice of an ophthalmologist till later down. So if you know you have this disease, get a doctor's opinion, a doctor's advice, and also you would have to take steps from there. If you know that it's progressed significantly, you could look at cross-linking. There are things that you can do, whether contact lens, hybrid lens, what kind of lens, scleral lens would work best for you. Or maybe you might have the need for a corneal transplant in the long run. So there are things that you can do to manage this entire disease so that it does not progress to a point where you lose too much of your already reduced vision. The most challenging thing is trying to figure out what's next. Keratoconus is one of those diseases where you just don't know what's going to happen. It seemed like overnight this happened to me, although it would have been a part of my life for some time. It progressed quickly within the space of months. So what I thought was a stable condition eventually rapidly declined. So this is why you need to be with a doctor's supervision, probably see a doctor very often when you have conditions like these. I would have had to give up certain hobbies. Keratoconus requires the wearing of contact lens, and I can't swim, for example, go into windy spaces. Anything that flies into my eye will disturb the contact lens. I've had experiences where the lens flew out, and the lens is as small as a needle in a haystack to find back. To just find it when it falls out is a whole issue. Sometimes I've had friends at parties looking for the contact lens. It's just like a whole adjustment. Don't put your hand in your eye. You have to always be really, really mindful that, you just can't walk around like everybody else. You have to be mindful this thing is in your eye and that, you have some restrictions on what you can and cannot do. I've overcome my challenges by reminding myself that, everything has a lesson in it. And I think my keratoconus has taught me a lot about patience. It has taught me how to persevere. And I would share one thing, in the pandemic, all my friends, some of them are very anxious and, they're scared about life and what's next. But I've been through that, I've been through the uncertainty. And I am most calm during the pandemic because with a condition like this, you have to keep perspective. Some strategies that I use to stay focused with an eye condition like keratoconus is really helping others. Believe it or not, when I shared my story on Facebook, it was the first time that I realized there are other people out there like myself who have the same condition and who needed information. And because I've been through the ropes in terms of, seeing doctors, getting various opinions, I was able to share that information to the point where some persons were able to save their eyesight by actually doing some of the procedures early o'clock. So to me, that gives me joy, knowing that I'm not suffering in vain. That other people could learn from me and could get something to help their situation. And I think also another strategy is really keeping positive. There's life after the loss of sight. People, it's not a death sentence. You can adjust. There are technologies, there are things that you learn as you go along. You meet other people who absolutely have no eyesight. So you keep an attitude of gratitude always.
We know the common causes for loss of vision in Trinidad and Tobago are either as a result of lifestyle diseases or hereditary. But just how common it is for persons to lose their eyesight?
So research shows that the number of children who are born blind is quite low. And so as one gets older, that's when the risks become more apparent that you may start to lose your vision. 80% of all vision loss could have been preventable, because a lot of things, if it's picked up on time, then there may be some form of treatment. But once one has vision loss, it's very difficult to go backwards and try to regain that vision loss. That is the dangers of vision loss. Once the vision has become challenged, and once the vision has deteriorated, normally it's very difficult to go backwards. So again, prevention is really the aim. So thankfully, overall, it's not common for people to lose their eyesight during the whole of their life. But if we are predisposed to those things like glaucoma and diabetes, then certainly it is going to be a risk. And that's why if you know someone in the family, or you have diabetes, you need to take it on board. It's not going to go away by itself. So a lot of these things are preventable. And again, if we think of trauma, so when we are cutting, when we are doing DIY, when we're in the garden, please make sure we put on the safety spectacles to protect our eyes.
Doing a PhD for me is challenging myself, pushing myself to my ultimate highest form of thinking, and also allowing myself to see that no matter what, I could still accomplish anything I put my mind to. My long-term goal is to lecture, to be a lecturer. Trinidad and Tobago has its challenges when it comes to, how it treats with persons with visual impairment or blindness. And just the recent pandemic is an example of that. You could go to any establishment and ask yourself, did they put protocols in place for the blind, right? And that is just a simple indication of, do people think about those who have challenges, and we have to always remind ourselves as a nation that it could happen to any of us. You might get into, God forbid, a car accident or a disease or something, or even, natural causes, and not be on the side of ableism, So the biggest adjustment for me, I would say, is considering the possibility of whether or not I would be able to function like I currently function. I'm a very independent, career-oriented woman. And, it brings into question, would I need support in the long run if my condition progresses in a certain direction? I am hopeful it doesn't. I think I have the right support team. But it definitely is a question that I have to ask myself daily and prepare myself for those challenges as they arise.
Life as we know, it can change in a heartbeat. So how does one cope with the likelihood?
When someone loses their eyesight, especially if they have been sighted and they are now in a position where they are non-sighted, this can be very devastating. Their quality of life is now compromised. They have to relearn every aspect of life. How do I read? Is my house tidy? How do I cook a meal? How do I continue with my social activities, with my leisure activities, with my friends abandon me? How will I keep my friends? So it's a relearning experience, relearning about their condition, about their diagnosis, and for many persons, this is not a journey that they welcome. I've visited the hospitals here, the eye clinics, and many persons, many family members who accompany these individuals, there is that greatest fear of them losing their eyesight, and I can see their worry, and I can see how concerned they are. And again, one of the most important benefits any family like this could have is education, education of what to do, education of access to services, being in the knowledge of what are the rehabilitative services that are offered, so that that individual member who may eventually lose his sight prepares for it.
Sight is very important. In fact, if you really think about everything you do on a daily basis, it involves sight. The only time you don't really use your eyes is probably when you're asleep. Sight is probably one of the most critical senses, and you use it all the time. I think people only take eyesight seriously when it's a problem, when they've realized that, they're seeing blurry or they need glasses, for example. I think that people take it for granted. They're seeing, so all is well. But you may probably learn one day that you are not seeing as well as you used to. So you need to have regular checkups. Learn about your eyes because they're so delicate. This is a very delicate organ to the front of your face. It's just so easy. It's only until you reach in a position like myself you realize that you can't take your eyes for granted. See about your eyes today. Parents need to remember to tell their kids, don't feel your child just wants glasses for style. Plenty parents tend to think that, their child is making up stories when they ask for glasses. But, take your children seriously. Take them to get their eyes checked. Ensure that they don't rub their eyes. I can't talk about this enough. Do not scratch your eyes. Do not rub your eyes. You could rub yourself into blindness.
We may not be able to predict the future, but Gina remains hopeful that everything always works out just as it should.
Dear Gina, everything is unfolding as it should. There's a lesson in every experience. Help others, and in difficult moments, trust the process, and of course your Creator. Love, Gina.